I'm Simon Woodhead, Managing Director of Simwood. Those of you around in the 1990s might know us better as ESMS. The company started in 1996, pioneering and developing the world's first gateway between the internet and SMS. For the last several years, we've been more heavily involved in the telecommunications space, and we're best known now as a wholesale provider of VoIP and other telecommunications services. Our aim is to be the network for the VoIP business, and for the last couple of years we've been substantially redeveloping and enhancing and in fact rebuilding our network. We didn't start out as an ISP and we didn't start out as a telco. We were essentially an innovator in both spaces that found the need to replace elements in the supply chain to achieve the level of service that we required. The result is we now have a national MPLS-based network built entirely on Brocade equipment. Brocade is used in all of the world's major networks and is well up to the job. We see our role as being the network for voice business now. We have our own national network built entirely on Brocade. We operate from currently 3 sites: London, Manchester and Edinburgh. Now naturally London is the major interconnect point on our network, but we recognised quite early on that we needed to be independent of London, because London itself was such a centre for connectivity that it was actually vulnerable to either terrorist attack or natural disaster. As such, we built Manchester up as our second site. In a UK context, Manchester is the second city. We have a complete duplication of London infrastructure in Manchester, connectivity with lots of other ISPs in Manchester, and what we believe to be the only connectivity out of the UK that is independent of London. The idea being London can cease to be present for a time and we will continue functioning from Manchester, at least as far as our international customers are concerned. A few years ago, we recognised that we needed to do something in the security space. Our own network, being renowned for VoIP, saw 20 to 30 attacks per day. Each attack maybe thousands or tens of thousands of events. Our own customers were seeing similar levels of attacks, and in some unfortunate cases, and in fact an increasing number of unfortunate cases, they were found vulnerable, and it left our customers incurring substantial expense and other disruption. We needed to do something about that. We looked around the market at everything from intrusion prevention systems through to DDoS mitigation, and within each space we quickly found that no one solution could actually address the problem. And in fact, whilst every vendor claimed that their own solution was the only solution that could do everything, we quickly learned that no solution could do everything that we needed, and we needed a multi-vendor, multi-level approach to the problem. So we set about selecting the best vendors that we could find for each level of a solution of our design. And the solution as it sits today is several layers deep and quite unconventional in the security and the DDoS space in the way that it works. At the very edge, a routing layer if you like, best network practice eliminates a good proportion of nefarious traffic just by disallowing IP addresses that aren't issued, for example, whereas many networks will pass them through. The layer beneath that, we are pioneering a thing called IP reputation, which aims to answer the question, do I want to admit this IP address to the network right now? We think of it a bit like credit referencing for the internet. What has that IP address done in its past? Particularly, what has that IP address done in its recent past? And is it good? Is it bad? We have a multi-level partnership with the leader in this space called ThreatStop. ThreatStop consolidate data from multiple sources, of which Simwood is one, and every 2 hours they produce a list, in fact they produce multiple lists, of bad IP addresses. So at the very, very front of our stack, if an address is listed, or even a whole ISP in some cases listed as bad in the ThreatStop IP reputation database, then traffic will not be allowed in from them. Equally, and just as importantly, traffic won't be allowed out to them. So if a customer of ours has a malware infection on their office network, for example, then that will be rendered impotent because those infected computers cannot make their calls home and therefore cannot reap any havoc. Beneath the IP reputation layer, we have a network behavior analysis layer. This passively analyzes everything passing through, and it's building up tens of thousands of metrics, connections per second, per source, port attacked, for all traffic going through. In the event of traffic from a particular source or to a particular destination deviating from what is an established pattern, it will start tightening up a little bit. It will start making it harder, putting glue on the feet of the traffic, if you like. The idea being that in the event of a DDoS attack, it will take the heat out of it. It will avoid that flood event from one or multiple sources from damaging the network. And because it's completely automated, the typical problem with trying to fight a DDoS manually is avoided, because there could be 10,000 different sources. It will handle it. Beneath that layer, and this is probably by far, with the IP reputation, this is the most relevant layer day to day, is a comprehensive intrusion prevention system. At one level, this acts like a stateful, very high level firewall. So if a customer of ours subscribing to this service only does web hosting, then at this layer we won't allow through voice traffic. Equally, if they only provide voice services, we won't allow through web traffic. But equally, everything going through will be analysed, signature analysis for current threats, further behaviour analysis, and further DDoS type analysis. So we view this as a finishing and polishing layer. But the important thing is that it's a finishing and polishing layer that is on 24/7, and all traffic passing through is analysed and dropped if deemed to be nefarious. Another point to note is that is two-way traffic. So outgoing traffic from infected workstations, for example, again, is filtered, analysed and blocked where appropriate. To support all of this and to provide source data for the ThreatStop IP reputation system, we have a number of research initiatives. The first is what we call our darknet. Now, this is an area of IP address space that isn't in issue and has no equipment on it. It to all intents and purposes doesn't exist. It's not performing any function. All traffic received on this range of IP addresses passes through our whole DDoS stack and is therefore comprehensively analysed. But because this IP address space isn't used, we know that anything received shouldn't have been received. It could be received due to misconfiguration, it could be received due to research, or it could be received through some wrongdoing or wrongful intent. And in fact, when you analyse it, the latter would seem to be the most logical explanation for it. That is capturing and profiling traffic 24/7, and it enables us to identify compromised workstations, command and control servers, and indeed dedicated servers that are being used specifically for targeted attacks. Essentially, it gives us a list of bad IP addresses on a very timely basis, but enables us to analyse their intent as well as their origin. That feeds straight back into the ThreatStop IP reputation base, what they were doing, when they were doing, and aims to answer why they were doing it. But equally, it feeds back through into the Simwood systems. So somebody hits the darknet, they won't hit anything else on our network pretty much immediately. In addition to that, which aims to map out the noise on the internet, if you like, we operate honeypots. Now, honeypots are, to all intents and purposes and to the outside world, production equipment. So, for example, we may have a SIP honeypot that sits alongside our other SIP equipment. It looks to the outside world just like one of our normal production SIP gateways. However, it isn't actually in service. So somebody that is seeking to compromise our network in some way and maybe attacking the equipment that they find will come across the honeypot. And the honeypot is specifically configured to encourage that. It uses default passwords. It is very lightly secured. However, everything that happens on the honeypot is logged and recorded. So we actually build up a real-time taxonomy of an attack on our equipment. When somebody attacks the honeypot, we can see at a packet by packet level what they're actually doing. From their perspective, they think they've compromised the equipment, so we see what they do next. It goes right the way through, in the case of SIP equipment, to them thinking that they have found an open relay that they can send ill-intended traffic to. And they do. And it looks like it completes. We not only record the audio of the calls, we have full details on where those calls are to, where those calls are from, as well as all the IP layer information on the source and configuration of that traffic. And that is invaluable information for both our IP reputation services, but our other security services generally, where we have a real good handle now on the taxonomy of a SIP attack, which really helps in preventing further attacks getting through the system.